As one of the very important climate scientists in the world, Kevin, are we on track now with COP21 to achieve a low carbon future?
No, we certainly are not. If you look at the current text that we have, it's much more in line with a 3 to 4 degrees C temperature rise rather than a 2 or even 1.5 that people have aspirationally said they want to try and achieve. So we're much more aiming towards a 3 to 4 degrees C temperature rise across this century. My big concern with the text that we have at the moment, and as I say we have 24 hours left before the very final text comes out, is that we have these grand aspirational goals of a 2 and even a 1.5 degrees C temperature rise across the century, and yet then when you look at the rest of the text, there is no reference to what we call carbon budgets, which is the scientific framing that we need to look at climate change. That's how much carbon dioxide we can emit across the century for these particular temperatures. There's no reference to the concept of decarbonisation, as we call it. There's no reference to a peak year, just the idea we must peak global emissions as soon as possible. There's no reference to any levels that we must try and achieve, so there's no numerical emphasis in this at all. The only real numbers in the new report are these aspirational targets of 1.5 and 2 degrees C temperature rise and page numbers. The rest of it is eloquent fluff, to be honest.
And when you talk about a carbon budget, can you explain how much of the carbon budget is left to keep within safe climate?
Okay, well, the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, gave us a very clear steer for a good chance of 10 to 2 degrees centigrade what the carbon budget is, and we have used up a huge proportion of that carbon budget now. So if we were serious about 2 degrees C now, we would need to have, in places like Ireland or the UK or the US or the wealthier parts of the world, we'd need to be delivering about 10% per annum reduction rates. That means 10% reduction in our energy, in our emissions year on year from now. We would need to have a fully decarbonised energy system. That means an energy system with no carbon in it, and that's not just electricity. That's our planes, our trains, our ships, our cars, our heating, our industry by 2035, with the poorer parts of the world following about 15 years later by about 2050. If you put all of that together, that will just stay within the 2 degrees C carbon budget. And there is no discussion of that scale of ambition anywhere within the current document.
When we look at aviation and international shipping, both of them, what are we going to do about those two sectors? They seem to be growing massively.
They are indeed. The emissions from both sectors there are growing very rapidly, and both sectors have no intention of bringing those emissions down. What is even more disturbing, in the Copenhagen Accord back in 2009, aviation and shipping were explicitly included. In the latest text we have from Paris here, they are excluded. Now, aviation and shipping emissions are similar to adding Germany and the UK together. So it's like having Germany and the UK with no control on their emissions, and we know they are growing very rapidly. It is absolutely inexcusable that the Paris agreement here does not include aviation and shipping emissions. If we are serious about 2 degrees centigrade, and if we let them carry on as they're going now, we will fail. Aviation and shipping emissions need to be under control just as much as the emissions from any other country.
And for example, you're talking about energy there, mostly CO2 emissions. What about methane and nitrous oxide? You know, there's lots of issues where we're emitting huge amounts of these also.
Yes, yeah. I mean, they are also very important. What we have done when we look at carbon dioxide, we make certain assumptions about what's going to happen with the other greenhouse gases, the methane, nitrous oxide and so forth. And then we say, well, what's left for carbon dioxide? So we look at them separately. But whilst we're saying you need to be zero carbon energy by 2050 for the globe, what we also know is that given that we have to feed people in the process of producing food, the process of agriculture, means you will always have some methane emissions and some NOx emissions. So we are fully aware that that's going to happen, but we can make that much lower than we currently have. We can have much lower carbon diets, much lower carbon or methane and NOx emissions type of agricultural practices, but we'll never be able to eliminate those to the levels that we can do with energy. So I focus on energy, but we must remember that the agricultural dimension is also hugely important in this.